Sunday from 1 to 3, right here on AM1280. Listen to the North every Saturday and Sunday at 1 on AM1280, the Patriot Intelligent Radio. The Lou Dobbs Report is brought to you by Business 1570.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Debate about interest rates, rising tension in Ukraine, stock prices moving mostly lower as a result. Crude oil lower for a fourth straight week. Those stories next.
Do you have a family member who is getting older and can no longer be safely left alone? The angels from Visiting Angels are standing by to care for the loved ones in your life who need in-home care. If you have a family member or friend who needs assistance at home with hygiene, meals, light housework, errands, or companionship, I hope you'll consider Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. These are the people who can help. Rates are surprisingly affordable, and up to 24-hour in-home care is available. You can even select your caregiver before care begins. Franchise opportunities are available. With more than 450 franchised locations nationwide, there's a Visiting Angels office near you. Call today, toll-free, at 877-374-LIVE. That's Visiting Angels, America's choice in home care, at 877-374-LIVE, or online at visitingangels.com.
Stocks end what was a volatile session, mostly lower. The Dow Jones Industrials down 38 points, the S&P down 4. The NASDAQ up 7 points on the day. The three major stock indexes posting weekly gains. The Dow and S&P, in fact, turning in the strongest weekly performances in 4 months. Ford talked about the Fed raising interest rates and escalating tension in Ukraine, putting investors on the defensive. 1% declines in the stock of Cisco Systems and GE weighing on the Dow. Better than expected earnings from GameStop, Gap, Ross Stores, and Salesforce.com. Those stocks up more than 5% on the day. Crude oil prices ending modestly lower, posting a fourth straight weekly decline. Crude oil settling under $94 per barrel.
Here we go. We have a wave here at the next governor. Is there any kind of a wave at all here at the next governor?
Morning glory and evening grace, America. It's Hugh Hewitt broadcasting from the Great Minnesota Get-Together, the Minnesota State Fair. I love coming up to Minnesota cold on an election year. And I had my friend next door at Home Depot, Kerry Schneider, gave me, in fact, he came through with the property of the Blooming Prairie Awesome Blossoms, which may be the least intuitive high school nickname ever, the Awesome Blossoms. Kerry, thank you so much. He also came through with a Hilarity 2016 t-shirt for me, courtesy of his buddy Mark Miller at stateoftheuniondistress.com. So I want to give a shout out to stateoftheuniondistress.com. Last hour, I talked with Mike McFadden, who's going to be Minnesota's next senator. Now I'm so pleased to be sitting next to Jeff Johnson, who's going to be Minnesota's next governor. Jeff Johnson, got some fans outside here talking. Welcome to the show. It's great to speak with you.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for coming to Minnesota, Hugh.
I always love coming up here, and of course, this is your home state. I want to get bio done first, but let's do the website first. JohnsonForGovernor.com. .org. JohnsonForGovernor.org. And then your Twitter handle was pretty easy, Jeff for Gov.
Yep, Jeff, the number 4, G-O-V.
I'm surprised that was actually available. No one named Jeff run for governor anywhere, and it's Jeff for Gov.
Apparently not.
Right.
We got that's Facebook and Twitter.
All right, let's start with bio. Like McFadden, you're another Georgetown lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer anymore, but I'm a Georgetown.
You're trained.
We actually graduated together from Georgetown. We were in the same class of '89. But I grew up in northern Minnesota, in northwestern Minnesota. My wife, Sandy, is also from up there, and we went to college at a small Lutheran college, Concordia, up in Moorhead. And then I went out to Georgetown, spent a few years in Chicago, and we've been back in the Twin Cities in Plymouth, one of the suburbs here, for the last 18 years.
Okay, and so, and doing what? What's your business?
My business, well, I've done two things. I worked for companies, Cargill being the big one, in-house as an in-house employment attorney for quite a few years. But then when I was elected to the House in 2000, I left there and started my own business. And I advise companies on how to stay out of court and not get sued. And I also do workplace investigations when someone's been accused of harassment and they want an independent expert to come in and give them my opinion of whether something happened wrong or not. I go in and do that.
And tell us about your legislative career, because a lot of people have told me you're like Tim Plenty, that you have the same sort of niche and the same sort of appeal.
You know, I was in the House for 6 years. I represented Plymouth and Points West, kind of around the Lake Minnetonka area, and my focus when I was there was heavily on K-12 issues, on K-12 reform issues, because we had 2 young sons at the time. But I also took on a couple of big issues. I authored in the House House. My co-author in the Senate who's now Senate DFL leader Tom Bach, really a rewrite of property rights laws after the Kelo decision.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and so we really made it nearly impossible for government to take someone's property in Minnesota for economic development purposes.
No, good on you.
Yeah, no, it's worked well. I also carried a pretty heavy-duty anti-meth, especially anti-meth lab bill, because that was a huge problem in central Minnesota at the time. And it was very comprehensive, and a lot of states started using that as a model after we got that done. And a few other big things. What I tried to do was focus on one big, difficult conservative item each year and figure out how to get enough Democrats in the Senate, because it was DFL control, to actually get it into line.
Now, you're running against Mark Dayton, who's a controversial, idiosyncratic, some people just say unusual character. How do you want this election to be framed?
Part of it is about competence, to be honest. And I have to be careful because Republicans, we don't want to come across as mean or nasty. But I think when you actually look at what has been happening for the past 3.5 years, and in particular the past year and a half with all DFL control, because Mark Dayton's had a DFL Senate and a DFL House, we have had no common sense or balance, and we've seen really a lack of competence from the governor. He signs bills and then later expresses outrage at what was in the bill because he clearly didn't read it, or he's briefed on something like the disaster of Minshire, which is Obamacare in Minnesota, and a week later says that he had no clue it was going to be the disaster it was, and we find out later that he had a...
Jeff Johnson, how does the governor get away? I mean, it is a disaster. Oregon and Minnesota and Maryland are the big three disasters. So how can Mark Dayton be anywhere close to being reelected? It's his program.
Well, the media doesn't call him on it, so that will be my job, is to do that in a way that doesn't paint me as a bully, because bullying Republicans lose in Minnesota.
Right.
And so I got to do that in a way that maybe shows a little bit of humor, which we plan to do, but we got to point that out. And it's about balance, it's about common sense, and it's about confidence in your government.
And so as you go around talking to people, and obviously you had a primary, you won the state convention endorsement, then you won the primary, so you had to use a lot of money, you got to raise a lot of money, you got to refill the coffers. But is the ground fertile? Here you are at the fair, you're talking to a bunch of voters. Not many people can be enthusiastic about supporting Mark Dayton.
No, and I've got a booth just down the street on Underwood. If you happen to be out here, stop by. And I've talked to hundreds of people just today. Some of them Republicans, many of them independents, Democrats, or something else. And people are very open. They may have voted for Mark Dayton, they might have voted for the Independence Party candidate or even the Republican, but they are absolutely open to looking at another alternative because what they've seen is not what they expected. They've seen real overreach on the part of the Democrats and the Republicans.
One thing I was talking with Mike McFadden about is that the absolute collapse of Minneapolis school that we've achieved that it's stunning.
It is, and we are consistently either the worst in the nation or one of the worst in the nation. And that is just inexcusable in a state that has such a proud history of education. But we are literally giving up on 10 to 15% of our kids because of where they live. And it's because we are unwilling to really take this issue on, to take on the education establishment, to take on the teachers, and say we're going to demand change, at least in those schools that aren't working. And that has been, if there is one calling card of Mark Dayton, it is that he lets the government union essentially control his administration. We've seen it particularly with the teachers union. And I try to be careful because most of the teachers out there are awesome.
Sure, we had a lot of teachers who come by or sitting out here. They've been always coming by. They always talk to me about how they are not represented by their union. My pal Doug Ducey, who like you is running for an open seat, is running as the Republican nominee in Arizona, is running on education reform, doing very well. I thought Mike McFadden sounded great talking about education reform. I think everybody likes this issue.
Yes, absolutely, because you don't have to be affected directly by it. If you're a suburbanite in a great school district, most people still don't think it's right that we are just failing these kids and their parents. And I look at Mark Dayton and just one thing after another, either the teachers union or a different government union has convinced him to do things that are clearly not in the best interest of Minnesotans, but are in the best interest of the unions that have gotten him elected. That needs to end because it's not really Minnesota.
Now, unlike Al Franken, he's at least said he's going to debate 6 times. Al Franken ducking McFadden. So where are those going to be, and how are they going to be structured, and will they be run in such a way as to bring forward? I mean, you should be talking about this exchange failure at every debate. Will the Minnesota media cooperate in bringing that forward? Because it's a nightmare for these people.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are one of the few states that actually did it worse than the feds, which is hard to believe. Accomplishment. He said that he will do up to 6, and so hopefully that means 6. They proposed 6. We proposed 13, but we proposed to start them right here at the state fair because there is no better cross-section of Minnesotans than you're going to get here. And he said, no, he doesn't want to do anything until I think. So I don't know where they're going to be. We're going to negotiate on that. Only one of his 6 is televised, and I think it's important that more than one is televised. So we're asking for 3 that are televised and then 3 with organizations that will be televised.
And so what other issues? Obviously education, the failure of the exchange. What else is good? I must say, the traffic is a nightmare. I was staying in Burnsville. I had to go downtown. I came back up for the fair. I'm here a lot. I come here a lot. I don't think it's ever been this bad.
No, it's terrible. And throw on top of that the fact that you go up to greater Minnesota and their roads are, in many places, are in really bad shape. And it's because we are diverting so much of our transportation focus right now to everything but roads. Every form of transportation, whether it's light rail or commuter rail or so-called high-speed rail, now an obsession with streetcars and trolley cars in Minneapolis. Hundreds of millions of dollars they want to spend. Sidewalks, bike trails, everything. And while people might think those are fantastic, they don't move many people, and they suck money out of our road budget. And I mean, we've got to prioritize and make sure what we've got is safe and adequate first. And then we can look at some of the other modes of transportation. So I agree with you. Transportation should be an issue, and then our business climate here in Minnesota. For me, that's actually the most important issue. The fact that we are so unfriendly to entrepreneurs right now, and we are seeing that in the business creation numbers. We're last in the country, according to the Patriot Foundation, in the last 4 years in creation of new businesses. And that is a stat that is very telling and is very scary if we keep it up.
Jeff Johnson, good luck to you. Come back between now and November. Let's do the website again, johnsonforgovernor.org. And the Twitter handle is Jeff4Gov, at Jeff4Gov. Good luck. Throw some change your way, and good luck with those debates. I hope you hold those feet to the fire, because it would be great to have another Valenti back here. He did such great things for the party and for the state, and you're very similar to him.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you. I'll be right back, America. My lawyer's in the house. Dwight Rabus has showed up. Finally, it's about time. I've been in Minnesota for 3 days, and my lawyer finally showed up. I'll be right back, America. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Show.
All that takes.
dingy institutional blue. The Northern Hawaiian Straight Network Live. Minnesota State Fair. Welcome back. Today's broadcast brought to you by townhall.com. We're broadcasting live from the Dave's 470 deck, live from Minnesota State Fair, from our booth we've been at for the last 4 years, year number 4 at Underwood at the south of Murphy Street. We are right next to the big Rescue One Home Depot booth, so you can see basically our location is flying helicopters 24 hours a day, should they be flying over the St. Paul area. And we're also on the north end of Machinery Hill for those of you who like machinery. Who doesn't, really? This is, of course, we're my 11th year here at the Great Minnesota Get Together. And what does that mean? Well, parade of candidates. Of course, the biggest candidate this year is going to at long last. Joining us right now for the next half hour, 45 minutes or so, Minnesota GOP endorsed candidate for governor, Jeff Johnson, ladies and gentlemen. We got a few people out there. Jeff, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day out.
Excellent. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Compared to last year, it was 105 in the shade out here. This is just the right amount of clouds and wind. It's still plenty warm. These are gorgeous.
It is. Thursday was a little rough. Today is perfect. Come on out.
Absolutely gorgeous day. So how's the campaign going for you so far?
It's going great. We got the primary last Tuesday, so it's been a week and a half. And I have been out. I missed one day. 3 days since put up on Thursday. It's actually been fun to be we're on Underwood as well as scout for you guys. Stop by if you come out. We are getting just a broad mix of people. There's a lot of independents and Democrats who are coming up and talk about issues, and people are very open to looking at an alternative to Mark Dayton as a encouragement.
What are you hearing from just the random assortment of people that you're running into? As I was walking back up from the London Royals game, I saw you out there talking with what looked like a mixed bag of Minnesotans. What are you hearing from people here up and about Underwood Street?
It is all over the place. I mean, you name the issue that has come up, although if I had to pick the one issue that has come up the most, it has to do with jobs in the economy. People are just concerned. They say, you can throw at us the fact that our unemployment rates are lower than the national average, but I'm not hearing that over and over.
Well, I've been writing about this past week. This 4.5% number that they're throwing around is not bad, but it compares about even with Iowa, Wisconsin, and not nearly as well as the Dakotas at this point. So and this idea that Twin Cities is the lowest unemployment of any metro area in the country. You're comparing with Democrat-run cities. You're comparing with Des Moines, Omaha, Fargo. We're looking like a cold Detroit.
Well, really key fact, and I've been talking about this a lot, and will continue to, that the underemployment rate in Minnesota is at 49%, according to the Dayton administration. That's not a Republican number.
That conservative tool, Mark Dayton.
That's right. And so that means that about people working in a job below their qualifications, and probably below where they want to be being paid for. That's why this is the kid with a 4-year degree who's living with his or her parents.
And I have to imagine that number is 49%. According to the Dayton administration, statewide, it's got to be worse in places like Iron Range, where the Dayton administration has been shamelessly stonewalling the mining industry for its entire term in office here so far.
Yeah, you get up on the range, and I don't know what the unemployment figure is there. It probably depends upon which city you're in, but it's much higher than the state average. And they are desperate for jobs up there. You bring up mining. That is a really important issue. We have a natural resource out there that God has given this state, just like He gave oil, right? A lot of oil fields. And our government is not allowing us to jobs.
Absolutely, and it's an example of what the Dayton administration has done up on the Iron Range. One of my favorites is my hometown of Jamestown, North Dakota, the only part of North Dakota that hasn't seen any unseemly prosperity from all that oil. What they're doing is they're building a steel mill there, and they're digging up all these taconite tailings of your coal range and putting them in trains to ship that to plants, to ship them out to North Dakota. It's cheaper and easier to build a steel mill in North Dakota and ship the rocks out there than it is to build it in Coleraine and Virginia.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's true.
Yes.
And I hear it over and over again. I'll give you another example. Move west a little bit and look at Fargo Moorhead. We were just up in Moorhead a week or two ago, talking to Moorhead business people that say, the temptation for us to cross over the border is staying with themselves, but grabbing it. The restaurants they can open up 20 to 1 on the fishing side because a lot of different things, but mostly
Yeah, and so many, I've talked to people of mine who work in the hospitality business in Moorhead, East Grand Forks, Worthington, where the cheaper alternative, the lower regulation alternative is if you're in Worthington 20 miles to the west in Sioux Falls, if you're in Moorhead or East Grand Forks, just across the Red River in North Dakota. It's especially in terms of gas. I mean, a pack of cigarettes. Don't smoke, of course, ladies and gentlemen, but if you do, it's $2 cheaper in North Dakota.
and people make rational decisions about where they buy things and what they do.
Money moves to where it's most welcome, absolutely.
You know, I want to go back to mining on the range again for just a minute because we were up there 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the message I was sharing, I just tried to be really blunt with it, which is if Mark Hayden is reelected governor, that Polymet mine is not you know, they are dragging it out to the regulatory process, so the governor can make an pronouncement before November 4th. That clearly means to me that there's no interest in opening it. And if you look at who has real power within the DFL party, it's no longer private sector, it's union, it's the environmental. And those are the two that are fighting. The unions want the jobs, the environmentalists.
And I think it's interesting to note that the most powerful non-elected political faction in Minnesota for the last 4 years has been what? Alita Messengers Alliance for a Better Minnesota. And what's driving the environmental movement up north? Alita Messengers Environmental Group. I mean, they all scratch each other's backs. They all get their funding from the same slimy trough.
Right. And when I go up there, the people who really want the mine say it drives them crazy because they'll have these town meetings and it'll be 80% local people who are arguing for it, and then 20% who are loudly arguing against it. All show up to the They're not local people. You know, these folks care about their environment because it's one thing that makes the Green Range what it is. And they're not about to spoil the land over a few jobs. But there is a way to do this in an environmentally sensible, fair way, looking out hundreds of years and costing hundreds of millions of dollars because the company is still willing to do it, and they're going to create real careers for hundreds of people.
Absolutely. And you go into the secondary markets that feed the mines and move things around from the mines and service the mines. It's thousands of jobs in a part of the state that no matter how much money the DFL throws at one program or another, still hasn't come back from the crash of the steel industry 40, 50 years ago.
No, they're in tough shape. This is, as I mentioned before, God has given us resources in northern Minnesota, and we can extract it in a way that doesn't, it is environmentally safe and we can, then why are we not doing it?
That's what, yeah, absolutely. The environmentalist movement drives up from the Twin Cities. It's stuck in the 1930s when it comes to how it deals with the mining industry. Maybe the 1950s is very lucky. So let's move downstate here, back to the Twin Cities here. Obviously, it's the Western Metro area basis of your support, but what is your path to victory looking like around the state? Where are you seeing the votes that be picked up by a Johnson campaign? Well, look at the polls that came back this last week or two here. You're coming in, depending on your poll, 5 to 11 points behind. Not a bad place to be, given that you just came out of the primaries.
Yeah, you know, the first national poll that came out from Rasmussen, which tends to be pretty heavily Democrat, they're kind of an outlier when it comes to, for example, Obama's approval rate. But they hadn't got to which I think, you know, if we see a different poll, it's probably in that range maybe a little bit better. I will take it. It is myself to the people in Minnesota, and everybody knows who Dayton is, and obviously ABM has had their attack hat on. So I don't think that's a bad starting point at all. And, you know, obviously, I will do very well in the West Minnesota. It's probably better than we've done in a while as Republicans, and I think that we'll do well in the suburban and exurban area in general. My goal is to do a little bit better in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and I think we can get and I've been doing that. But I think that but Dayton's going to win Minneapolis and St. Paul by a huge margin. We know that. I think the decision is going to be made probably in Minnesota. And when we were out at Farm Fest, I just got the Farm Bureau endorsement. We've been traveling. Running a farmer down in rural Olmsted County. We've been traveling the state for months, and I've been doing that as well. Farmers and people in greater Minnesota are not happy right now with the base administration. They really feel like it's a Minneapolis-centric philosophy from, frankly, a Minneapolis-centric ticket. Where he's been finished with the vote that's where they're focused. And Greater Minnesota is feeling very much ignored by us. And I think they're right. And I think there's a real opportunity.
That's the one big thing about the economic situation in Minnesota under Mark Davey that I think that the media certainly misses, and a lot of people in the metro here miss. And that is, this is a great metro area to work for a Fortune 500 company, and the Fortune 500s are doing adequately well if they're not decamping to Ireland for whatever reason, or not leaving the state. But in Greater Minnesota, the tax increases are hitting a little harder. The business sales taxes increases are hitting, places where the market is a little tighter and the market's a little smaller. It's a lot more outside.
It is, and also the regulation of this administration is killing, particularly farmers in Greater Minnesota. But that is what I hear over and over again. Why does the government act like it is there for us to serve them rather than vice versa? That kind of goes to the bigger issue of this culture amongst the agencies and the bureaucrats that the government is here to punish and regulate and to help us succeed.
Absolutely. I want to talk about your changes. You basically, the Johnson agenda. It's been christened wrong for Minnesota by the Messenger administration. Excuse me, Alliance for Better Minnesota, which means it's certainly worth a listen at the very least, since everything seems to be wrong for Minnesota that isn't required. At any rate, we'll talk about that when we come back. But people want to find out more about the Johnson campaign. Where can they go to find out more?
JohnsonforGovernor.org is the place to start.
JohnsonforGovernor.org. And what kind of help do you need? Obviously money. I mean, money is big at this point in campaigning here right now. But what are the ways can people help the Johnson campaign?
Money is big. That is my priority probably 80% of the time. But we obviously need people to spread the word and volunteer. And if you go onto the website, you can click on the volunteer box and we'll make sure you know about all the opportunities there.
If you have questions for Jeff Johnson, 651-289-4488, or I have Mr. Microphone here if you want to stop up and ask questions for Jeff Johnson, GOP-endorsed candidate for governor of Minnesota. We'd love to have you on the air here, because that's what we're here for. We come out to the fair to talk to Minnesota, so by all means do. Let's take a break. We're live at the Minnesota State Fair on the Dave's Floor Standing booth on Underwood Street, just south of Murphy Avenue, right next to the Home Depot, from whence you hear the pounding sound. It feels like home. Go to the Alliance AM1280, the Patriot. Be right back. AM1280 The Patriot, Northern Alliance Radio Network, live at the Minnesota State Fair. We're on Underwood Street, as in Frank Underwood Street. Yes, that is the cultural touchstone this year. It used to be the typewriters, now it's the underhanded dirty dealers. We're at Murphy Street, right next to the Home Depot. Yes, it is Kids Project Day out here at the Minnesota State Fair at the Home Depot booth. And it's adorable. Watch these little kids pounding away with the hammers, except when they pull back a little too far and whack Dad in the nose, as we saw one of yesterday. So be careful, everyone. But I should have brought that up because there will be another Dave administration regulation right there. You have to wear full-face welding masks to do these kids' promotions at their Home Depot booth. So I don't want to give them any ideas, Jeff Johnson, so I perhaps we should shut up and move along to the interview. We're talking with GOP-endorsed candidate Jeff Johnson, running for governor of Minnesota. Won the primary last week. I mean, really, we're just a week away from the primary, so really you're kicking off your campaign really for the third time.
No, that's true. We're 10 weeks and 3 days left, so I got in last May, so the campaign is like 92% done for me already. It's all cool.
Well, you're past the hard part here, so don't we wish. So, we're probably going to talk to pastors about the turnout numbers in the primary here. Good thing, bad thing. I've got my own opinion about this. What do you think about the turnout numbers in the primary?
They were about what we expected. There's no way around it. You always want to see more voting. So better than 10% would be nice. But that is about what we expected. This is the second time that we've had an August primary, and it's not a good time to have a primary. But the Republicans who were paying attention and informed,
40% more Republicans in the last go-around. 80% fewer Democrats in the last go around. I have to think that's got to be encouraging news here. So let's talk about we've been talking about the campaign so far. Let's talk about Johnson administration. God willing, with the tailwinds, and we'll do what we can here. You get sworn into office here this coming January. Let's talk about the first 100 days of the Johnson administration.
3 priorities, and they haven't changed in 15 months. They won't change after the election. Number 1 is the economy, business climate. And it has to be the number 1 priority of the next governor because we are moving so quickly in the wrong direction. And when you look at the numbers starting in 2014 of job creation, we hit a wall in Minnesota, and we are not comparing with the states around us. If you look at the last 4 years, it's different. But that is 2 years of a Republican House and Senate and a fairly conservative budget. But now if you look at really what has happened since the all-VFL budget has been instilled, we're not moving forward anymore. So that is job number 1. Number 2 is education reform. And I have a lot of ideas on that, but I'm going to have a particular interest in the achievement gap. The disparity in graduation rates between white students and students of color, one of the worst, if not the worst in the country. Probably 30 years here. We keep throwing money at it, and we don't change a thing because no one is willing to take on the powers that be. Some of the education establishment and certainly this governor is not willing to take these teachers and in fact they run the place.
There's actually a teacher up in the rafters at every press conference pulling the cord, the wire on one of Governor Messenger's arms.
Not necessarily a teacher, but certainly one of the
union operative. That's right.
Yeah, I always try to be careful about that because every teacher that our kid has been awesome.
Yeah.
But the union is unwilling to allow for changes that will be good.
That's a huge distinction that the GFL tries to pull over. My father was a teacher for 40 years, and a great one, and a local leader twice. But by the time he got to the end of his career, and watching how the union had metastasized from a collective bargaining organization to a political hatchet committee, he's still a Democrat voter. But instead of talking about the teachers union, he sounds like a Ron Paul guy. It's not the only one.
Right. Now, and we have really, I'm getting a little off track here, but I do want to point this out. One of my biggest disappointments in the Baker administration is the fact that he really is letting government unions run the show. Not just the teachers union, but asking others. And you look at child care unionization, you look at the fact that he was unwilling to allow Teach for America, which everybody agrees is good for kids to move forward, that's competition for the union. The fact that they eliminated this basic standards test for teachers and they simplified the basic standards test for the kids so that they could narrow the achievement gap by moving the line down rather than moving the bottom line up. And it's just one thing after another. Very frustrating. And I won't do that. And I won't do that. I'm not going to let unions run the show. I'm also not going to let business communities run the show. Because that's not how a governor should try to do what's best and take input from everybody, but not letting political supporters force you into this. And that's what we're seeing right now.
We certainly are. So absolutely. So business, education, the economy, education, and I imagine that's what you're hearing the most about.
Absolutely. Those 2 things. And then the third one, though, I maybe hear about more than anything, and that is people who say, talk to me all you want about but my business is start wasting my money. You hear that from Democrats, and they're right. We are. We're not prioritizing, but we're also not measuring programs. Thousands and thousands of programs and we don't usually figure out which ones are working.
Business 101, you measure the output of what you do. And in the 2011-2012 session, my good friend King Banyan, fellow Northern Alliance guy, moved some legislation to actually add some accountability to sunset some of the programs that aren't working. What was one of the first things the Dayton administration hacked out of government? That Sunset Commission. Basically, it just said, Dayton administration's message to the governor of Minnesota, as wasteful as you want, there will never be any accountability. Well, they're the sloth administration.
And it really showed that his unsession, he wasn't very serious about that. The quickest way to get rid of that was to have a sunset provision that automatically does it. But that was one of the first things that VFL did when they had all VFL control over there. So my goal is to start auditing programs. Every single one of them over a 4-year period. No one can sure they're doing what they want them to do. If they really are moving people off the welfare, we should celebrate those programs. But there are so many that don't help anybody. Just throw money at a problem.
Does the Senate need another office building?
No, thank you. It doesn't, and unfortunately, by the time I'm sworn in, it'll probably be mostly done. So I think the question then becomes, what do we do with this? Because they're spending more than $1 million per part-time senator to build that building and claiming that we don't have enough to fill it.
They could rent office space in downtown St. Paul, buy a Winnebago and a car for every single senator to get back to their constituents for less than spending on putting them in an office building.
Well, it's just, I know it's symbolic because when you look at the big picture, $77 million isn't a lot in the big picture, even though it is to us. Right. But it's an important symbol because I think it shows us almost everything that's wrong with the Gates administration and all DSL control. We have no priority anymore. They spend on everything that they think is a good idea, or even if they know it's not a good idea, if it helps the constituency, they'll spend on it.
Now, when Rudy Giuliani was working up to become mayor of New York City, he made his name beating back the mafia, organized crime. I think there's a great opportunity for Governor of Minnesota to make a similar case, beating back our own versions of Tony Soprano, our sports teams. What's going to be the Johnson administration's philosophy on subsidizing billionaires and their teams?
Well, it will be the same as it has always been, because I was over there during the Twin Stadium, I was on the county board, and I was in the Viking Stadium. And if it's a pro team, it's not the proper role of government to be spending taxpayer dollars on that. And, I've got it easy now because I don't think they're going to be back for a few more years to ask for anything new. I think we have a new stadium for everybody now. So, but mark my words, in 20 years they'll all be back asking for more taxpayer dollars. When we say we don't have enough money to be basic in this state, we hear all the time on the DSL, then we shouldn't be spending money on a stadia for private owners.
Metrodome was 30 years old when we recycled it here. I got to figure, Target's getting pushing 20 and Excel's 15. What's getting down towards those shelf lives here?
Good point. We're going to be hearing from Excel soon.
Exactly right. 651-289-4488 if you have any questions or comments for Jeff Johnson, GOP candidate for governor. Also, taking questions here from the audience. If you got a question, give us a holler. We'd love to get you on the air with any questions for Jeff Johnson. Yes, we'll get you on in a moment here, sir. But perhaps maybe we can keep you for another segment to take a few questions from the audience. So Jeff Johnson, what are the other big things that you're looking to do on your campaign? I mean, this is you got your victory, you got your first 100 days lined up here. What do you think the opportunity is for Republicans here in Minnesota in this year's election?
I think it's great. I really do. I know that a lot of people are talking about taking the House, and I think we've got a great shot at taking the House. I feel pretty good about the Senate race. I feel great about the governor's race based upon my conversations out here, but more data-driven. Some of the polling results that we've seen, Mark Dayton is consistently under 50%. This is always a red flag for an incumbent, and there's a lot to work with there. I think I'm going to be talking a lot about competence. I'm going to try to do it in a way that doesn't come across as being angry, but I think people in Minnesota really value competence in government, and I don't think we're seeing that right now in the Dayton administration. We signed bills, we don't seem to know what's in them. In fact, they express outrage often what's in them, and we briefed on something like the insure, and a week later we didn't know it was going to be a disaster.
Absolutely. I've been calling it the messenger administration for quite some time, but after this last year and all the takebacks he's done on all these things that he has signed, I've been tempted to rechristen it the Mulligan administration. He's got so many do-overs. 651-289-4488. We'll also be going around with the microphone with questions for Jeff Johnson, GOP-endorsed candidate for governor of Minnesota. Feel free to join us. We're live up here on Underwood Street, just south of Murphy, next to the Rescue Orange Home Depot booth on the north end of Machinery Hill. If you can smell cheese curds, you're getting close. Northern Alliance Radio Network, AM1280, The Patriot. Go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Marty! How you doing? Oh, excellent. You know what they say, the worst day on the air is better than the best day off it. After I get off the air, sure. Yeah.
And I did get that with the t-shirt right when you said that.
That's why I said that's just across the street. How you doing? Yeah, see you around. And, if you have a question, see you around. Okay. Well, I might just walk around the car a little bit here. Catch you later. Yep. Yep. potentially running the city, which is something we need to like replicate in St. Paul. You guys are in Crystal? Which is all roads seem to lead to Crystal. Because my ex-wife was with Crystal originally, so the vortex keeps sucking me back out to District 25. Anyway,
Hey, thanks for stopping by.
I need to think of a question if nobody else has one. I need to think of a question if nobody else has
Welcome back to Twin Cities and World Northern Alliance Radio Network, AM1280 The Patriot, live on a gorgeous day at the Minnesota State Fair. And when I say gorgeous, I mean it's not beating down sun. It's not 101 degrees out here. It's there's a nice breeze coming through. At least there was. I'm sure it'll come back. The occasional little raindrop out there still to remind you to stay close to a tree. But it's just a beautiful day out there here at the Minnesota State Fair. And if you're not here yet, you should come on out. Of course, it's pretty crowded already. So enjoy finding the parking here in the Midwest. But that's something you get to do with every year here at the Minnesota State Fair. We're talking with GOP-endorsed candidate for Governor Jeff Johnson. And, of course, one of the defining traits of every campaign over the last 10 years here in Minnesota has been the machinations of the big union, big plutocrat money from the Alliance for Better Minnesota. They're out there hovering out there with their propaganda campaigns every single year. And they had an effect, I think, in 2010, maybe to some extent 2008. In 2010, I thought it was one of the most toxic, sleazy things I've ever seen in politics. It belonged in Chicago politics, frankly, more than most things. But they're having a harder time dialing you in here, I think, Jeff Johnson. It's got to be driving them nuts.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. They have been on the air now since I think the day after the they consider, with a commercial that they probably consider pretty hard hitting, but I don't think it's hitting that hard, and it's also, to be generous, misleading. Even NPR said it was misleading. I would think it's lies, but it says Jeff Johnson voted to cut education so he could give money to corporations, which is kind of a tired old argument they make about all of us.
Just for the benefit of listeners who may have seen the ad and not know the facts behind this, and maybe don't listen to NPR as much as perhaps some in St. Paul do. Well, what's a little bit of the story behind that ad and your side of that?
Sure. The ad is ominous music and dark clouds rolling by saying Jeff Johnson, the Tea Party Republican, voted to cut education and give money to corporations. And what they're citing to is a bill that I voted for to actually increase education spending, but not as quickly as had been projected. So there was an increase in spending, but they love to call that a cut because it's not as much as they wanted, which misleading is a nice way to put that. And then 2 years later, so connecting them is a little silly, but 2 years later I voted for a tax cut bill, which I would vote for again today because taxes are too high in Minnesota, and claimed that was giving the education money to corporations. So pretty weak, but nonetheless it's out there and they're hammering away at it, and if that's the best they can do, I think it'll be okay.
Hammering away with the gleeful joy of all those kids pounding away at the project at the Home Depot booth for the first time, and with about the same precision. We have a question for you from Kathy from Apple Valley. Kathy has a question about MNsure, everyone's favorite Minnesota IT project.
So how are we going to get rid of the exchange? And do people really realize that all their medical data plus all their financial data is all going into a central state database? And it will eventually go into a national database?
You know, that's a great point to bring up because we almost never talk about that when we're talking about MNsure. We don't talk about the data privacy aspect of it, and it's terrible. And I think if your average Minnesotan knew that, they would have a fit about it. But, we need to get that message out a little more. But the bigger picture with MNsure, obviously it's a failed website, and we spent way too much money on it. It'll be fixed at some point. I keep saying that, although that's something new pops up. Maybe it'll never be fixed. But assuming that it is, the bigger problem is not the website. The problem is this whole Obamacare philosophy. MNsure is Obamacare in Minnesota. That government should be directing each of us to our health care, to our health insurance. It should be telling us what's, quote, adequate and what's not adequate. And for, 140,000, I believe it is, Minnesotans, they were told that the insurance they had for years was, quote, inadequate, and they were taken off. And, it's the wrong direction to go. We should be giving consumers more choice and more options rather than fewer.
Yeah, and that's all true. The overall philosophy of Obamacare, what you ensure is not only a part, but perhaps one of the greatest imitators in this country, is all wrong. Dare we say, wrong for Minnesota. But in terms of just the IT side, speaking as someone who works in the IT industry for a trade, when a project goes very, very wrong, bringing in a new consulting company works every time. Trust us.
Well, and if you look at MNsure, there were, I don't know how many states did their own exchange, but there were, less than half. The federal exchange is a horrible mess, but somehow we managed to do ours worse. And that might be the greatest accomplishment.
Yeah, in fact, we're duking out with Oregon and Maryland, I think, for the bottom of the barrel. The other one, we're continuously at the bottom of the barrel. This is something that didn't used to be the case. It kind of speaks to the first element of your campaign, business and the economy, and that is Forbes magazine for 2 years in a row has put Minnesota at the very bottom of the national rankings. Number 50, or last year number 50, this year we're in the bottom 3 or 4 for states in terms of business climate for starting new business, states for entrepreneurship. We are at the very bottom. And I don't think the people who work for Fortune 500 companies perhaps, or for established businesses know this, but this is where the jobs of tomorrow come from. This is where the new businesses that will be hiring your kids come from. And they're not coming here in Minnesota.
They're not. In fact, the Hoffman Foundation, which is a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit, measures the creation of new businesses every year across the country. And if you look at the last 4 years, Minnesota is dead last. We're even behind D.C., coming 51st. And we're also losing Fortune 500 headquarters, 4 of them in the last 4 years. So we're losing the big companies we have, we're not creating the new ones, and the message needs to be that we can do so much better than what we're doing right now, and if we just change the climate to encourage consumers to build businesses here and encourage our big companies to expand here rather than elsewhere, everything changes, and we won't have 49% underemployment. We'll have people who are able to start climbing a career ladder and have better lives, and I think that's what everybody wants.
And by the way, Jeff, I'm assuming you're trying to appear as the reasonable moderate here to some extent. 4 Fortune 500 companies in the last 4 years is technically accurate. It's more like 4 in the last 18 months. I mean, the pace is picking up.
Right.
And by the way, people who say that all those jobs, Medtrine's going to bring back 1,000 jobs, that will almost make up for the number of layoffs they've had in the last 4 years. So celebrate while you can.
Right. Well, and for the governor to argue that it's a good thing that Medtronic took its headquarters away from Minnesota and actually moved out of the country, and he did. It's crazy. Yeah. Because in fact, you're right, it has been, I'm just saying, over the date, and we've gone from 21 Fortune 500 headquarters to 17. That's a loss of about 20% in one administration.
Absolutely. Kathy from Apple Valley has another question for you, since she's on a roll here. Kathy?
I'm going in a different direction. What are you going to do to get rid of light rail? We are now talking a technology that was okay in the 40s and 50s. We are now in 2014, 2015, where people are telecommuting, we're talking about driverless cars, and we're going back to railroads with streetcars. What do we do to stop that?
Streetcars are now the new, we've built another 19th century form of transportation for the future. Here's my issue with trains in particular. Here's what I've always said. If you can show me a train that actually has a cost-benefit analysis that makes some sense, in other words, what we're spending as compared to the congestion relief that it will provide, I'm all ears. Just none of the lines we have here can do that. And in fact, with Southwest Light Rail, the battle I've been fighting on the county board now for 5.5 years, and we just had our final vote to give it an okay, and I was the only no vote, and my comment was, I've been asking for 5.5 years for a cost-benefit analysis on this, because I want to know whether it's going to relieve congestion. I haven't gotten one, and the reason is because it's not going to relieve congestion. It's about the agenda, but it has nothing to do with transportation or mobility or helping people get to where they want to get. When we consider how much money we're going to spend to build it and then subsidize it every single year, we're not.
By the way, since you live in Apple Valley, I went on the Green Line during its inaugural run about 2 months ago, and when I finally got off the train, I noticed on the little route they had up there that they're showing a new red line going down to Apple Valley. Show down Cedar Avenue, meaning that you can get from the Apple Valley Transit Center to downtown Minneapolis in only an hour.
Like what you're doing here at the fair. All of a sudden, all the parking is gone.
Don't get me started on that.
They want everybody to do transit. I'll get to the point where I won't come anymore because I am tired of them controlling what behaviors I want, and they're trying to make it more advantageous for you to ride the bus line than to drive your own car.
That has kind of become the mantra of government now, is our job is to help people make good choices. In other words, the choices that we want them to make, because people don't have enough information or aren't quite smart enough to figure it out themselves. And that's a lot of city and county government right now. It's certainly state government under Dayton administration, and it's exactly the opposite direction we should be going. People are smart, and they ought to be able to make their own decisions.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of people who are interested. There's a lot of people who are probably not. I mean, we had 10% turnout in the primaries, which I think tracks pretty accurate with the idea that I have that 90% of the people don't start thinking about the elections until Labor Day, State Fair time, May, October 1st. Sometime in the next 30, 35 days, people start paying attention to it. Now, your campaign really is kicking off right now with the end of the primaries here. And the big question I think a lot of people have is, okay, we have a lot of people who are just starting to pay attention to this race right now. What can we do to help Jeff Johnson get into office? How can people help out? Besides the money thing, we'll talk about that in a moment here, but what can people do to put a bug in people's ear about how things need to change and how very different the two parties are in this election?
Got to share the message. I mean, this is as much about people talking to their neighbors and the people they work with and their kids, friends, parents at the baseball game as anything else, and talking about where we're headed as a state and the fact that we could do so much better. And when someone responds to you saying, well, look at how great everything is, because that's what the media is telling us, explain to them that, maybe you can look at the surface, but look below that and find out that people don't have the jobs they want and that we can do better in this state. And if people start sharing that message, and then also on top of that, go to the website and offer to volunteer. We always need help. Sign up. I'm at Jeff, the number 4, GOV.gov on Twitter and Facebook. Those are always great to be part of that network, and that's probably the best way for people to share the message as well.
Absolutely. Well, if you're out there listening, by all means, spread the message, because we have a DFL noise machine paid for by union dollars and government union dollars, not private sector union dollars for the most part here. It's not your carpenters union that's doing this, all you kids out there. Just remember this. It's the public sector, the AFSCME, the mates, that are pouring money into making sure that the word doesn't get out, to making sure that smoke gets blown up Minnesota's collective skirt here. We need to fix that this election. So, Jeff Johnson, what website one more time?
JohnsonForGovernor.org.
JohnsonForGovernor.org. Thank you very much. We'll definitely do this again before the election here. We have to do this, absolutely.
Thanks, man.
Jeff Johnson, ladies and gentlemen, running for governor of Minnesota. That's what we like to hear. Thank you very much. Let's take a break. When we come back, scheduled to have Senator Dave Senjum joining us here. We'll see if that happens here. We'll see if he comes barreling up the street here, drawn by the sound of the pounding over here next door at the Home Depot booth. Join us, would you please, 651-289-4488, the Northern Alliance Radio Network, AM1280, The Patriot. Fair.
Hey, Rich, how are you? Good to see you. Likewise. You know, I'm all revved up. Always great idea. That's right. Hey, how are you? Great. I just got off the news run.
That's right. I'm like Ed Schultz.
That's
my birthday. I'm not here to make you a one fan. Don't worry.
No, it's really good.
Available to set a door that too. You may use that way to monthly program.